All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making a plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety, topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, they working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays.
All right, gentlemen, it is Wednesday night, and the NFL offseason literally blew up yesterday for like absolutely no reason. It blew up, and I'm kind of just completely shocked, and it just makes me that much more excited for this this coming NFL season, that much more, because all of these players moves.
Like a snowstorm in July. It came out of nowhere and just wrecked everybody's lives.
Literally, like everybody's lives, Vegas bets are gone. I mean, they haven't really probably opened or started yet, but they're gone. But gents, how are y'all tonight? How are y'all feeling after all of these moves?
Amon, you go first.
I've been in a little bit of shock. I was like, man, what are we going to talk about on the show? I know Joe got some great topics boiling up, and then boom, everything just kind of exploded, and the water just fell out. The dam broke.
I'm very upset. I had perfect topics. Nobody could come up with better topics, and you guys are just like, you know what? We don't need to talk about them. We have better news. So I'm very, very upset, and I'm going to take it out on you guys tonight.
Look, we're only talking about one of the breaking news because I refuse to give Aaron Rodgers like 30 seconds of a spotlight.
You just put the L in there already. You know it's not going to change anything.
Exactly. Right? Look, technically he's undefeated in AFC championships. He's 0-0. So I mean, he has a better record in the AFC than he does the NFC already. But we'll never know. And of course, Joe.
Really, we're doing this already,
right? Yeah, I was like, we're not going to do this. We're not doing this.
We're not spending any time on Aaron Rodgers except the first 45 seconds to dump on him. But then we're getting right into the news.
But then we're getting right into it. But I will say the big news that I feel like is actually the most interesting for really both teams is that Carson Wentz got traded to the Washington Commanders. Now, Joe listened to my podcast today. Kind of Nostradamus this a little bit, and I'm kind of proud of it. Like, I did this like 12 hours before it happened. I'm like, yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Basically, Tony comes out and says, listen, Washington's in no man's land. Like, they didn't get Rodgers. They didn't get Russell. What are they going to do? They're kind of, up a creek without a paddle. And then it decided to rain poo all over them today.
Exactly. So it's interesting because Indy has given up 2 third-round picks for him. Come to find out, one of those is actually going to be a second-round pick for this year, as well as a third round for this year. And then next year, it's a third round with the potential of it becoming a second rounder, depending on the incentives, basically. So kind of like this year, I think if he plays at least 75% of the snaps as the starter,
70%, yeah.
70%, that third round pick turns into a second round pick. So Indy opens itself up for free agents. They now have over $70 million in free cap space because they get rid of Carson Wentz's $28.5 million cap hit. Washington absorbs that. They still are the losers in this whole quarterback race thing because they didn't get Aaron, they didn't get Russ, and they're like, we're not waiting for Jimmy. We're pulling the trigger on Carson. So, right, I'm like, why? So, Amon, I'll start with you. Did the Colts really get worse? Did Washington really get better? Like, who's really the winner out of this trade?
I would say Indy, just because you're able to move off of the cap space that, or the cap hit that you had when Carson Wentz was in town. And again, you can still make a move for Jimmy Garoppolo and basically have the same kind of cap hit. I think he's all the books to make around $28 million this year as well. You have a similar cap hit there. Washington's in a position where, like, you're hoping Carson Wentz kind of sees Philly on the other side twice a year and says, you know what, I'm going to play like I was in Philly my first year that I actually was able to start. Because you have pieces. You have a number one receiver finally for Carson Wentz and Terry McLaurin. You have a dual backfield and Antonio Gibson and the other running back in McKissick if he signs back. And then the defense is there if they can get back to the form that they were in 2 seasons ago. But Washington's really hanging on a whim here. I think they kind of jumped the gun. Ron Rivera has a history with more mobile, athletic quarterbacks, i.e. Cam Newton. So maybe he's trying to use him like that. But Washington has to get a little bit creative with Carson Wentz here. I think Indy is able to now have a lot of flexibility and go out and do a lot of different things. But they're banking on a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo to come in town. Otherwise, they're going to be in the same kind of boat Washington's in is, well, we don't have a quarterback for the future.
Yeah, and I'll say this. I think for Washington, it's not for lack of trying, because we have reports that they offered a crap ton for Aaron Rodgers. They also offered a crap ton for Russell. And I think, honestly, Washington's biggest predicament that they're in right now is that they tried to trade with the 2 teams that are in the same conference as they are. They tried to trade within the NFC. Those teams aren't going to let that happen. Like, no, we don't want to trade them into you, because if we're able to still go on any type of a run, or if you are, guess who we're going to have to deal with? Each other. And we don't want to do that. So, Joe, do you think, considering all of that, the fact that they got the short end of the stick of not getting the premier quarterbacks, I mean, Carson Wentz wasn't bad last year. He was able to throw 27 touchdowns to 7 picks with really a pretty crappy wide receiver core. It ain't like anybody's raving over their wide receiver core at all. So do you think now that maybe he gets a little bit of a better support system in Washington, kind of a downgrade in offensive line, definitely a downgrade in the running game, but about the same caliber on defense and coaching, do you think he could potentially revitalize his career in Washington?
This is terrible for Washington. This is horrible for Washington. Do you know why it's horrible for Washington? Because when you trade for a quarterback and people say, then you didn't really do anything. Like, this is insane. This is like when they signed Ryan Fitzpatrick last year and everybody's like, yeah, Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to take him to the promised land. I'm like, what are you talking about? Amon, you stole my point about Cam Newton. Like, ideally, yeah, that's what Ron Rivera wants. He wants a play action guy, somebody who can get outside the pocket, has a strong arm down the field to get to Terry McLaurin, to get to Curtis Samuel if he can stay healthy, to get to Logan Thomas, to get to all these weapons. People forget, when healthy, Washington has a really good offense. Like, they've got pieces around. Again, though, Tony, what's his ceiling? An almost MVP candidate? A guy, if he stays healthy, he can go to the playoffs? I mean, that's what it is. Again, the Colts... I don't know what kind of Jedi mind trick they pulled on Washington to take all of the $28 million and not a first rounder when they lost a first rounder to get Carson Wentz. Like, it's absolutely insane. Like, they basically, I don't know. It's like they were playing Jenga and got to move 5 turns in a row and then left somebody with just all the crap left over. Like, it's insane how this got pulled off. Again, is Carson Wentz the answer in Washington? Probably not. And the sad part is, this is one person's fault. This is Dan Snyder's fault. Because when you have questions of ownership, players don't want to go there, especially quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers likes being in Green Bay because he doesn't have an owner to answer to. Essentially now, he is the owner. he has literally turned himself into the I am the captain meme. Like, I am the captain. That's it. I am the captain. Russell Wilson, yeah, right now Denver's in the process of selling. Guess what? He's only 33 years old, and he's only signed for 2 more years. If he doesn't like it there, see ya. If you don't make me the highest paid quarterback, see ya. Like, this isn't a big deal, and he does not want to go to that dumpster fire that is Washington. Again, like, what's the upside? Yeah, if he stays healthy. Is the Washington line worse? Yeah, a lot worse. I mean, again, I think the Washington defense will play better this year, but... Jeez, oh man, I just don't see it.
Yeah, I agree, because I mean, like you said, Washington is such a dumpster fire, and what quarterback really wants to go there? And even when this was, they said that Washington was going to make a strong push for some of these teams. It's like, okay, what do you really have to offer though? Like, you have a star wide receiver in Terry McLaurin, which is fantastic, but you only have one. Curtis Samuel, when healthy, is solid, but he has to be healthy. And you have Logan Thomas, who is quarterback turned tight end. And I mean, he's not terrible, but he's not the caliber of tight end that, you would probably want if you're Aaron Rodgers, as compared to maybe like a Mercedes Lewis. Hell, even as much as I don't care for the rest of the roster, Robert Tonyan is a better tight end than Logan Thomas. And Logan Thomas is kind of in the same boat too. They have to play so hard and they have to put their bodies so much on the line to make some of these catches to put their team in position. They get hurt. So, and like you said, they have a regressing offensive line. They can't figure out if they are going to franchise tag or sign Brandon Sheriff to a long-term deal because he's going to want like Zach Martin, Quentin Nelson, top guard type money, which he rightfully deserves.
Yeah.
You want to talk about top 5 guards, you got to throw him in there right now in today's time. And yeah, for Denver, I agree too, and I was thinking about this the other day. If I was a Denver Broncos fan, I'm not going to be upset in this moment, but I am going to be upset long-term because as a fan, I'm sitting here thinking you guys literally can't draft a quarterback. We have to go pick up basically another quarterback that is either about in the prime or kind of towards the potential tail end of their career for us to go to the Super Bowl. Now, as a Broncos fan, hey, you get to go to the Super Bowl like once every 7 years, or at least compete for the Super Bowl once every 7 years. But it's like, yeah, we can't draft a damn quarterback though to save our life. Like that to me is I would probably be the most frustrated with. Like, well, what's next great quarterback who wants to end their career potentially winning the Super Bowl in Denver? Like, we'll have everything built up for you, but like that, that just makes zero sense to me. And I refuse to talk about Aaron Rodgers, so I'm not even going to get into that one. Can't stand him. Can't stand him.
And by the way, Logan Thomas, very good tight end. To me, he is a cheap version of Algie Crumpler from back in the day. He's kind of a big body tight end, catches really well. Maybe not the most athletic guy, but plays the part well.
Yeah. And I will say, I think he slid in really well after Jordan Reed not only went to San Francisco but then retired. I think he's fit in really well, but he's pretty much got the same issue that Jordan Reed was having. It's like, hey, you're going to be our primary receiver because our wide receivers other than one is garbage. So prepare to get the crap knocked out of you by a linebacker. Anyway, we'll kind of move on. So one thing I do want to get into is, so the NFL and XFL obviously announced that they're going to have a partnership. And the NFL has basically said, hey, we're going to kind of adopt the XFL, kind of see how they do as far as like a G League for us, maybe look at some of their rules, et cetera, et cetera. And then obviously what are some things that we maybe see in the XFL that we would want translated over into the NFL and vice versa. I will say the one thing I want the XFL's kickoff into the NFL. I think that's extremely smart. Like, kick the ball. The players can't move until after it's been kicked, until after the person has the ball and starts to run. Because I feel like now, how many times do the kickoffs always end with a touchback? Like
80%.
They can fair catch it out to the 10-yard line and still be a touchback. I was like, I don't understand that rule. Like, where did that come from?
Safety. Yeah,
right.
safety.
Yeah. So it's like
I know why. I was like, how?
Yeah.
And I feel like
those are the rules according to the law I'm on.
Right. And I feel like you miss so many like interesting opportunities because like you look at a player like Devin Hester, Deion Sanders. How do they make their name? Kickoff returns for touchdowns, punt returns for touchdowns. Punt returns obviously are still viable, but kick returns, they're just gone. Yeah. It's like, okay, well, if that's the case, just start us on the freaking 25-yard line and we'll just go. Like, there's no point even then for the kickoff anymore. That would be the only thing I would take from really the XFL over to that. I feel like now that the XFL has made itself into more of an established football league as compared to what it was when I first watched it when it came out, and it was just basically Jackass in football form. I mean, Joe, you were alive to watch it. Like, am I wrong?
I was. It started out with some promise. And then, of course, the more Vince McMahon dabbled his finger in it and stuff, the worse it got. It had promise. They actually had some real players, but it just, like a lot of things, started off with a bang and progressively just got worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. But is there anything that you would take from the XFL now that it's been revived? And honestly, I feel like had COVID not happened, I think the XFL would actually still be going around today.
Yeah, to me, this isn't necessarily taking something from the XFL, but the XFL made it very clear whenever this was announced, that it's not a partnership. It's not a, we're not a minor league for them, even though they're essentially a minor league because they're sponsored by the NFL. But what I'd like to see the NFL do is really try and do things like minor league baseball has done, where some of these rule changes and see how they work out. It's also a breeding ground and a training ground for referees, because you're going to see the action of football. You're going to be able to get these referees in at a younger age in fast-paced football, not collegiate, and kind of work with some of this stuff. Two things that I've talked about before. One, I would like to see them try is the 1 foot in bounds for a catch, not 2. Now, there is a catch though. It has to include the heel of the foot. You cannot be on the sidelines on your toes with 1 foot. You have to at least have 1 foot flat on the ground for a catch. So if a guy's running to the sideline, he catches the ball, he makes that one stomp, and he's not able to drag his toes, that's a catch. That to me is a catch. So I'd like to see them experiment with that. So it's a little bit like the collegiate rule, but you're also putting an emphasis on the whole foot. It's not just the top of the cleat. It's not the side. It's a flat bottomed foot. That's one thing I'd like to do. The other one I'm going to steal from my podcast partner, Sean. He's in Canada, so try not to hold it against him. But what they are able to do is something like the arena leagues do, is where guys can motion in before the pre-snap, but they can move forward. So what I would like to see is I would like to see them experiment with something where a player within 2 yards of the line of scrimmage can move forward before the snap.
Okay.
So as long as you're within 2 yards. So like if you run, like you'll have the 3 wide receiver sets where 2 guys are in the back and 1 guy's in the front, or 2 guys are in the front, 1 guy's in the back. I'm sorry. That back receiver could actually get a head start as long as he stays behind the line before the snap. You have a line judge right there. He's looking right down the line. He can tell when the ball snapped. So those are 2 things I think could be innovative, a little bit of fun, and really inject some kind of ownness to the XFL.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see it, and yeah, I love how they come out and they say no, we're not. This isn't a partnership. We're not a minor league. This isn't necessarily a bad thing for you, XFL. Like you are having to come back. You had a very good following when before COVID shut down, and unfortunately, you knew you were going to kind of struggle with the attendance numbers anyway. But it's like it's not necessarily a bad thing, because again, if you do it right timing wise, you're an extension of the NFL. And I know some people are like, oh, well, it's just the verbiage. No, if your season starts as soon as about a week or so after the Super Bowl ends, people are going to want football. They're always going to want football. Start it at the same time. You could even do beginning of March, like March 1st. That's when the season starts, or first week of March, whichever. First week of March starts, and you have your playoff, you have your season through, let's say June, July-ish. Give yourself a couple months, have your championship game, and then that literally puts it into, okay, the NFL draft has happened, the combine has happened, June, July-ish. Okay, now we're going to start to get into some of the training camps. We're going to get into some of the off-season OTAs, and then it rides right into the NFL preseason. I mean,
Sorry, I was going to say, if you start at March 1st, like you're saying, you could basically run the league for 7 weeks leading up to the NFL draft. Then the league takes a 2-week sabbatical, which is basically the bye weeks for the teams. And then they come back. If you do a 12-week schedule, then you can have your final 5 weeks and then go into your playoffs. So again, it goes right into what you're saying. It goes into like early to mid-June, which is perfect because that's when training camps open.
Yeah. And this is actually going to sound crazy. What if, crazy thought, what if instead of a combine, players go in the XFL? Hey, see how you do. See how you do in the XFL. I mean,
injuries are the biggest concern, but yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, because I mean because I feel like it wouldn't be like Joe said, you're going to worry about injuries, but I mean, it gives guys the chance of, I don't care for the combine because it's like, oh, well, he runs like a 4.2. Okay, cool, but he can't catch the ball. All he can do is run fast. Look at John Ross. He can run fast.
Look at Forrest Gump.
Yeah, Forrest Gump, literally. Forrest Gump's perfect example. Just run, Forrest, run. Like, that's all you got to do. Don't worry about catching the ball.
That was a movie I'm on in the early 90s.
Okay. I've seen the movie.
Okay. All right, Spooner.
Jenny. Jenny. But I mean, it would give guys, like how much film, like even some of the even some of the big sports networks have talked about the fact that how well Malik Willis did the combine, but they're like, we don't have a whole lot of tape on him. Here's your opportunity. Give him tape. Go have him play out there. Go have him perform. But
So what rule changes or what rule experiments would you like to see him on?
So there was one thing I actually saw in the XFL, and they had a review system, and they were reviewing the play, but you get to hear what the actual review official is saying to the referee on the field. And I said that'd be great because
That's
I know
awesome.
we have like the commentators and we have the rules official, whoever for that company, but if you have that guy's verbiage going down, you can actually understand because a lot of times it's just crapshoot while we're there. I think that's a cool rule that you can take from the XFL and implement into the NFL. At least try that out because, again, there's a lot of times I'm like, how the heck did you call that what it was? And that'd be a great way to at least understand what they're seeing. And then I was also thinking about the kickoffs. I was like, the kickoffs are so boring now. Like no one cares about what the kickoff is. You catch it at the 10-yard line. Okay, fair catch, 25. Let's do something different. Don't let them move. Just try different things. Like the XFL was fun with the kickoff. I enjoy the kickoff. And Devin Hester, one of my favorite players. Love him playing on Madden with him because of what he could do with the kickoff. So I think that would be another rule that you have to try.
yeah, you look at Devin Hester. I mean, hell, Percy Harvin a few years ago when Seattle went to the Super Bowl, it was like he's gone.
You guys are too young to remember a player like Eric Metcalf for the Cleveland Browns who made a living. Again, some of these guys were just like third down running backs who return kicks, and they just made careers out of it, and it's just not there anymore.
Yeah, and I feel like while it doesn't happen all the time, like those are game-changing moments. Like sometimes that's all you need. Like you just need your special teams to make something like that. It's like, all right, cool, we're back in the game. Like this could be a one-score game now. So yeah, I definitely agree. And we'll kind of move on into our next topic and I kind of mentioned it with the NFL Combine since it's over. And Aman, I'll start with you. Do you think that combine performances affect then how teams are going to draft? Like, do you think if a dude has like a crappy combine performance that teams are going to be like, maybe he's not the guy that we maybe saw in college? Or do you think hopefully they're like, no, okay, we have a little bit of an idea of what he's got as far as combine goes. We know what he can do on the field though. We'll still stick with him.
Yeah, I think, like you said, hopefully it shouldn't affect their decision to pick him or not pick him, but it could because sometimes you get too concerned with he only ran a 4.6 40. Can he really run in the NFL? There's a difference between running in shorts and running in pads. Some people have game speed and some people just don't. Some people have ball skills and some people don't, and you only really get to see it when you're out on the field. Usain Bolt could come in and run faster than all of these guys. Does that mean he's going to be a better NFL receiver than even, anybody? Jacoby Myers is still a better NFL receiver than Usain Bolt will ever be. So it shouldn't affect anything that these guys are doing. Yeah, I think the combine is important for those small school guys to, oh, wow, he did bench 32. Or Malik Willis, look at the arm. Most people haven't seen it before. Okay, now let me actually try to cut on some tape. That's what I think the combine can be useful for. To me, pro days, which I don't even hold to any value, are still more valuable to whether a player should get drafted or not than the NFL combine is, because the combine is just what are you physically good at, and football, as we know, is far beyond what you can do physically.
Yeah, because I mean, you look at a player like they were talking about it for the Cleveland Browns. Jarvis Landry had an awful day at the combine, and I mean he's one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. I'm not going to say he's a top 10 by no means. I mean, but he was solid for the Dolphins, and now he has Baker Mayfield thrown to him, unfortunately. But I mean, even then, he's still been productive with that. So I mean, that says a lot. Joe, to you, do you kind of agree? Do you think that the combine is useful to a point, or do you think that it should just be replaced with something different?
Kind of a little bit of both. I mean, Amon said, like, there's game tape, there's pro days, and then there's the combine. Like, there are certain drills that actually do make sense. The 3-cone drill, your directional awareness, things of that sort. Unfortunately, like the bench press, like, yeah, it's the underwear Olympics. Okay, like these guys are literally training for the last 2 months, sometimes even longer, depending on when your season ended, for this event. Like a guy cannot walk off the combine field and go play football because they're not in football shape. They're in testing shape. There is a difference. So to me, like who was the Georgia defensive lineman?
Jordan
ran
Davis.
Jordan Davis.
Davis. People are talking about him and all these great numbers, which is incredible. And they're like, yeah, like this is a guy who could get picked in the mid-20s. The mid-20s, if 15 years ago, if that guy had that combine, he's going number 2 overall. A quarterback's going number 1, and he's going number 2 overall. So again, there is like a little bit where we've really started to damper down. You see less coaches go. They kind of are just like, okay, we'll send a few scouts. They don't pay as much of attention to it. I actually came up with an idea for some combine things to change last year. I won't bore you with those now, but part of it is if you want to turn this into a TV show, which they have, let's get some competition. Let's have guys run against each other.
7-on-7. Let's go.
I don't even want 7-on-7, but like you're telling me that you don't want like 2 DBs, 15 yards apart going at the same time on the same gun. Like you can't electronically time both. I'm sorry. How do they do it in the Olympics? Like, come on. Like if you're going to make it into a TV show, at least make it into a TV show worth watching. Yeah. Malik Willis put on this great thing. He was in shorts.
Yep.
He had no pass rush.
Yep.
Like, did I hear anybody analyzing his arm angle? No, but they will when they look at the game tape. Yep. They're just like, oh, look at it, 70 yards. You know who looked good in T-shirt and helmet? Johnny Manziel. Guess what? Not that great. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, and I think too, because you look at it, especially when you have these different positions, like Jordan Davis, like that is incredible speed for somebody that looks like he's going to transition over very well to the NFL, especially what he was at Georgia. But look at the defensive lineman from Virginia Tech, ran like a 4.3 or something like that. Yeah. It's like, yeah, that's kind of scary. But you also have to think about it too, like Joe said, you've been preparing this whole entire time for training shape. Like, yeah, you've probably lost 20 pounds at least in just muscle weight. It's like, yeah, cool. You can run really fast. But this right tackle is going to be able to hold you with one arm, even though you're super, super fast. Like, no, you got to find that perfect balance. Like if you're going to do that, you got to have the perfect balance of like TJ Watt build, but TJ Watt also has strength too. Like, I don't care if you're big. I don't care if you run a 40 in like 5 seconds. Can you get through an interior line? Like that would be all I care about.
I saw a coach say one time, he said, show me the piece of footage on any NFL film. Take the millions of hours that they filmed and find a defensive lineman who has run 40 yards in a straight line. Find it for me.
Never.
You can't find it. It doesn't exist. So again, like it's all fun and games, but like to take it seriously, I'm good.
Yeah. And that's kind of crazy because really the only time you ever see a defensive lineman running is if he, for whatever reason, got an interception, like big man makes a pick or a fumble. And that's about probably the biggest time. Like, you guys as Patriots fan, you guys probably remember, what was it? Conley.
Vince Wilfork, baby.
Yeah. It's like
Dan Conley kick return. Oh,
like 70 plus yards. It's like, yeah, that's the fastest you're going to see a big man run in a straight line ever. Like ever.
Oh, it's great.
Sorry, I'm reading this topic that Joe sent. So obviously we also saw that Calvin Ridley has been suspended for a year because of gambling on the Falcons to win, because they believe that he had inside knowledge on, I guess, whether or not the Falcons were going to win or not. And has been suspended for a year. Should that be the case that players who he bet $1,500, he stepped away from the game? Now, I think the way he stepped from the game, I'm like, that's kind of crappy, dude. You said you were doing this for mental health, timeline wise. You're just wanting to bet on your team, which, okay, I get it. You're trying to be kind of an average dude while you're off. Joe, I'll start with you. Do you think that players should have this stiff of a punishment? Because, I mean, think about it. You look at, players like Ray Rice, Kareem Hunt, AP, you look at all these guys, hell, even Zeke. Like, as a Cowboys fan, I was the most frustrated with that. He got all the charges dropped in Ohio of anything negative against him, and they were like 6-game suspension because basically you brought bad attention to us in the NFL. Do you think the punishment should be that stiff of, oh, hey, here's a year suspension for something stupid like betting on your own team?
All right, if you guys need a snack, now's the time to do this because I've been heated about this. I talked about it last night on my pod, so here it goes. Yes, and yes. You pay the idiot tax. This is a cardinal sin of the NFL and all professional sports. You don't gamble. You don't gamble on your own sport. You don't gamble with other sports. Listen, people who want to say, oh, it was only $1,500. Well, Ray Rice only slapped his girlfriend. Is that the same? No, it's not. It was horrendous. It was a crime. Guess what? So is sports betting if you're an NFL player. It is clear. Shannon Sharp talked about this. When you walk into the locker room, there's a big sign that says, do not gamble on sports. It is a rule. We've had Paul Hornung. We've had Alex Karras. We've had Art Schlichter. All these guys get banned for a year, and with Schlichter, an entire career because he couldn't stop gambling. Again, I'm not one to question Calvin Ridley's mental status, why he stepped away from the game. I don't think it was to make 3 parlays for $1,500. But again, this is the idiot tax. Go to Walmart, buy a prepaid Visa. Have your girlfriend sign up on FanDuel. The NFL, when they got into partnerships with all these organizations, set safeguards in place where there are people monitoring to make sure NFL players don't get busted, which is how Calvin Ridley got caught. Like, he used his own name. He used all this stuff. Like, Chris Carter literally used to go to the rookie symposium and talk about having a fall guy. I don't condone that, but like, really, Calvin Ridley, you couldn't just have your girl sign up under it and be like, hey, load $1,500 onto the account. I want to make some bets. Like, the joke has been made. He bet $1,500 and lost $11 million. But the biggest thing out of this, and I want to give some credit here, it's to the Atlanta Falcons, because over the last month, teams had been calling about trading for Calvin Ridley. The Falcons knew the NFL was investigating Calvin Ridley, and there was a good chance he was going to get suspended for at least a year. They did not inform the other teams, but they basically told them no. So instead of trading him in a bad faith trade where they could have gotten probably some decent value, maybe a second rounder or even a first, they didn't. So kudos to the Falcons. Again, on the issue of domestic violence and things like that, those are all fair points, except for the fact every single suspension that Roger Goodell and before him, Paul Tagliabue, have been criticized. Not enough, too much, inconsistencies, everything. They've always been an issue. You can't, I shouldn't say can't, because it's a matter of opinion. You can't, I said it again, you shouldn't be upset at the league that has been inconsistent on punishment when they're inconsistent on punishment. Like, let's just call it what it is. The NFL and Roger Goodell should not be making decisions. It should be a 3 to 5 person panel full of ex-NFL players, lawmakers, or people like that. You know who should be on it? Have a 3-person panel. Condoleezza Rice, not a big fan personally, but she's very smart. She's on the college football playoff committee. Why not have her be part of a 3-person panel who decides punishments for infractions regarding the NFL? It just, yeah. But yes, you pay the idiot tax. You're gone for the year.
Okay. Yeah, Mon, do you kind of agree that, he should have gotten that? Do you think he should get more?
I agree that the year is, if that's what they deem, that's what they deem, because he deserves whatever punishment they deem to him. And I'm coming from a point of view of it. I watch a lot of cricket. I know it's not a sport that many of you might be familiar with, but in the cricketing world, there was this scandal called match fixing. There's this 19-year-old left arm bowler from Pakistan, and he was one of the next up-and-coming kids. And so in cricket, you can pitch from a line. You have to be at least on or behind that line. And he was so far over, they said that's not natural. They looked into it. They found out that he was part of this match fixing. Someone paid him to pitch an illegal delivery on that one. Now, there was a lot of gang stuff, and his family was whatever that situation was, but he was suspended for 5 years in international cricket. 5 years. There was the biggest cricket league in the entire world, the Indian Premier League. A whole team was suspended for an entire year because there was match fixing from top to bottom in that entire organization. I think you have to nip this in the bud. If you're going to allow sports betting to happen, you can't let the players be involved in it because, again, this affects the integrity of the game. I'm not saying Calvin Ridley was doing this or was not, but he could have easily said, hey, Matt, could you make sure you don't throw a touchdown to this guy? Or, hey, could you do, not saying anyone would sanction it, not saying that they would do it, but this is something that could very much happen for guys who might not have $20 million contracts, might be making bottom of the barrel. They said, what if I can just, do this? If when they throw it to me, I don't catch it, or I do this or the other. You have to protect the integrity of the game. I've seen it happen on an international level for a lot longer. And I think that the NFL is very well in their rights to say, look, we got to nip it in the bud, and you got to put a stop to this right now.
Yeah.
The Spooner did good.
Listen, yeah, we talk about it at the Olympics. We talk about, judges who, with bribes. I mean, the Russians alone could, write a whole book about this. Again, I brought up a point when I talked about it last night on my pod. There was the last season that Julio Jones was playing for the Falcons. There was a play in the fourth quarter where he's running down the field. He splits the defenders. The ball falls into his hands in the end zone, and he drops it. And everybody's like, wow, that's crazy. Like, Julio doesn't drop that ball. That was just kind of a weird thing. And you're just like, well, it happens. And there were still jokes about, oh, he probably got paid to drop it. That is the one joke that you do not make. You don't say bomb on an airplane. You don't talk about throwing games in the NFL. Like, they are sins. You don't say them, because all it's going to do is open a can of worms. And like Amon said, you have to nip this in the bud. You cannot let. We live in a conspiracy theory driven society here in the United States. Let's just call it what it is. Good or bad. We do. JFK, everything. I won't even get to the other stuff. But that is exactly how this starts. If you go easy on Calvin Ridley, the first game Calvin Ridley is back, everybody's going to say, you dropped the pass. Well, did it on purpose. Like, it's just not good.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So John has asked us a few questions. So real quick, who do you guys think is better this year, Kyrie Irving or Jason Tatum? Joe, start with you. Who do you think is better?
Give me the guy who's actually allowed to play in his home arena. It's clearly Jason Tatum. He's a two-way player. Kyrie couldn't guard the North Pole from Santa, and it's Tatum. It's not even close.
Amon, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll take JT. It might be just because I'm a Celtics fan, but also he does play every single game that he can. Kyrie Irving cannot play at home, and I'm sorry he drove James Harden out of town. Jason Tatum, I don't think he's driven anyone out of town, except if you want to include Kyrie Irving, because he wanted to go play with KD. So give me Tatum, two-way, can play at home. I'll take that.
Now, I will say this as not a Celtics fan, so completely unbiased. I will say Jason Tatum, because like Joe said, Kyrie took a stand. He hasn't been able to play in his home court, so he's played not even half the games of the season. So I mean, yeah, right now it's Jason Tatum overall, and I think especially with how hot the Celtics have gotten here of lately, I definitely think that it's Jason hands down. Now that Wentz is going to Washington, do we think that the Colts are going to go after Mitchell Trubisky? I will say there are reports earlier that Mitch is actually looking to reunite with Brian Dabble and go to New York to reunite with him. And honestly, I think he's going to beat Daniel Jones out for the starting job because, I mean, why not? Now, the real question is, what number are you going to wear? Because they retired 10 for Eli. So, I say bring it back. But that's just me.
Maybe number 11 fits him well.
11's retired too. # Phil Sims. Do you guys agree? Do you think the Colts maybe sneak in there if they can't? Because the 49ers were like, hey, we'll trade Jimmy, and now they're like, oh, maybe we won't trade Jimmy. Maybe Trey needs a little bit more time. Like Mitch isn't bad. Like you can win with him. Like it's not like he was garbage. He's not going to be your perennial quarterback. Like he may or may not cost you the game. But do you think if the Colts went after him, he would be an upgrade over Wentz?
I think it would be settling. I think they would be better off going after somebody like a Jameis Winston with a little bit more upside. I think it would make sense to go that route. I'm not sure that Mitchell Trubisky is the long-term answer because as again, he actually has a winning career record, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, or it's pretty darn close.
He's 26 and 21, I think.
Something like that. So again, what's the best he can be? You talked about it earlier, Tony, like Wentz in Washington. Well, at his best, he can be this. What can Mitchell Trubisky be at his best? We haven't seen it, and maybe we never will. But we know Jameis Winston at his best can at least throw for 5,000 yards and at least throw for 30 touchdowns. He'll also throw 30 picks, presumably not now, but we know that he can put up numbers. I'm not sure that Mitchell Trubisky can put up those numbers. So to me, I would much rather go with a Jameis Winston than a Mitchell Trubisky. I agree with you. Going to the Giants makes sense.
Yeah. Amon, do you think, because I mean, to me personally, it's like, yeah, if I have Daniel Jones and I have Mitchell Trubisky, Mitch gives me a lot better opportunity than old Danny Dimes does.
Yeah, I think Mitch is more athletically gifted at the bare minimum, at least arm talent, and then he can run around. I know Daniel Jones has a couple of running touchdowns, and he broke off the one run where he stumbled onto the 5-yard line. So tells you all you need to know about his running ability. Look, I think Mitch Trubisky would be an upgrade. Reunited with Brian Daboll, I think he fit in that offense quite well. And again, I think for them, you're not winning a Super Bowl, but at least you have someone who can give you a little bit more. I don't think he'll throw as many interceptions. I don't think he'll make as many mistakes as you'll see out of Daniel Jones. I think he's a guy who, yeah, he's not going to give you a lot of great plays, but he's not going to give you a lot of bad plays. So he'll just be somewhere in the middle. And right now, for the Giants, they need someone who can give them something in the middle until they find a long-term answer.
Yeah. Now, supposedly, the Giants, I believe, I can't remember if it was I think it was for Aaron Rodgers or maybe it was for Denver. One of the two, they were actually offering multiple first-round picks, and they were offering Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley both in a package for one of those guys. Now, to me, kind of makes sense that nobody took them because Daniel Jones is hot garbage. It's like Eli Manning's, little cousin that is, it's like the Make-A-Wish kid that you agree to give an NFL team to. That's Daniel Jones. I know that's really dark and really bad, but I feel like that's kind of true with Danny.
That's Danny. We put him in right field at the family softball game. It's okay. He's part of the team.
Exactly.
He
gets to participate. It's fine. And then if Saquon can stay healthy for 5 seconds, that's great. But that's about all you're getting. If. But yeah, I think Mitch goes to New York, competes for a starting job. I think that would put New York in a significantly better position than what they are right now, because it's not like they're going to get a great quarterback out of this draft. They, for the love of God, need an offensive line. God, they need an offensive line. They've needed an offensive line for the last 10 years. But anyway, then of course his next question for Amon specifically: do you think the Patriots go after Amari Cooper?
Well, I know they're trying to make a push for Calvin Ridley, and obviously that's not going to be the case now. I'm sure they'll take a look. Do I want Amari Cooper? I'm not sure, because I don't know what a predominantly outside receiver is going to do out there. Again, if he's willing to adjust and change it up, it'd be nice to have a downfield option, but I just kind of feel like you're settling in the market. If he ends up being the last thing available and you need something, he's going to come cheap. I'll take him cheap, but if I have to pay him $18 million, I'd rather pay JC Jackson, which we aren't going to be able to do, which is unfortunate. But, I don't think the Patriots are going to go after Amari Cooper with his price tag.
That number is 20 million, sir.
20 million?
As a Cowboys fan, I would know. Joe, what do you think? Because, I mean, Mac Jones needs a weapon. Bama. Why not get the Bama boys back together? Even though
probably because Amari Cooper was having somebody else take his test for him when Mac Jones was in middle school. That's why that doesn't make sense. If you're matching the guys up together, you want them to at least play together. Vaughn, finish your water. Come on, sir. No, listen, Cooper is a fine receiver. He's not a number one. I don't care how much money he makes. He's not a number one receiver. He needs to go to a place where somebody else can take the pressure off of him. When we saw Amari Cooper at his best is usually when the ball was going over the middle of the field or down the field to other receivers. He is a really good possession receiver who has an issue with drops and getting in his head at times. So no, I do not want him for $20 million. I'd much rather go look at players like Allen Robinson, maybe a Robbie Anderson. They've been sneaking around him with Carolina. I really like Robbie Anderson. But to me, the team that makes sense for Amari Cooper, if they really want to do this, it's Jacksonville. They have the cap space. They need somebody that Trevor Lawrence can throw the ball to. Amari Cooper clearly does not like the cold weather. I'm pretty sure Jacksonville doesn't get below 50 degrees most of the time. And again, if I'm them, I call up and I offer Dallas a 3rd-round pick. Because if he's cut and hits free agency, You're going to have to sign him to another contract. You're going to have to compete with other teams. If I'm Jacksonville, I call and I say, listen, it's time to shake things up. We need wide receivers. We don't want to have to overpay. So here's a guy who is overpaid, but his contract is going to be shorter. So if I'm Jacksonville, I call up, offer a third rounder for Amari. If you don't like it, Dallas, tough, cut him.
Yeah. I mean, I will say as a Dallas fan and partially as a Colts fan, depending on who the Colts get at quarterback, I mean, that's not a bad piece to have. And again, the Colts would have the cap to be able to absorb it. That would be an upgrade for their, wide receiver room. Is Michael Pittman actually that wide receiver or not? Is yet to be seen. But you at least have
not the real 11.
Exactly. But at least you have, two young pieces, because Amari Cooper is only, I think, 26, 27.
Yeah.
He's still young. So, I mean, you could have a really young core right there. Yeah, you're going to be paying about $20 million. But at least the first year, you could maybe talk Dallas into, hey, can you kind of take this? Can you not type thing? I know as a Cowboys fan, I definitely think we overpaid him. I really wish they would do more of, hey, Amari, can we talk about restructuring your contract a little bit? Because for Dallas, I think it helps because you have Cooper. Gallup has proven, at least his rookie year, he wasn't a number one at that time. Because if he was the number one, he's getting double teamed and they were going nowhere. And Dallas was 3-5 up until they traded for Amari Cooper. And then they were able to go on a pretty decent run with him. So to me, I kind of agree with Joe. I think you need him to have another wide receiver to complement him and to complement your other receiver to give you that dual threat on the outside or in the slot, whichever one. He said, last I saw Steelers going after Watson, but do they have the cap for him? I don't know if they have the cap. And God, you thought the Russell Wilson trade was big? Holy crap. What? It doesn't matter. Like, again, this is all dependent on the whole court situation, which I think, if I remember right, he's supposed to go in front of a jury on Friday.
Yes.
So we don't know if that'll be a verdict or not.
Well, he's going to go in front of a civil case, some civil cases on Friday, and he's going to plead the fifth because the criminal case has not gone forth yet, and he does not want to say anything in the civil case that can be used against him in the criminal case, because if they catch him in a lie, he's done. He's going to plead the fifth.
Yes,
yeah. Plus, I don't really see the Steelers. I don't see them going as big after him. I think the Steelers are going to more kind of rely on the draft and maybe go for, if he's still there, I think they're going to go for like a Kenny Pickett. I think he'll be gone by then more than likely. But I think they'll probably reach with one of these quarterbacks, or all honesty, they may give it to old dented Mason Rudolph and say, "Here, man, here's a extra dented helmet to keep you safe, and good luck."
The Watson thing to me doesn't make sense. For all the sniffing around that's been done about him, you don't know what's going to happen. Like, is the NFL going to retroactively say that this past year was his suspension?Maybe, but we don't. I mean, yeah, doubtful. I mean, Tony, you're shaking your head, doubtful. But we don't know. So I'm not giving up. Like you said, 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and a third, plus 3 players for Wilson. I mean, Watson is 7 years younger, a longer contract. I mean, you might as well give up half the bridges in Pittsburgh, because that's what it's going to take. Again, Houston is going to wait for the best deal, but they know themselves. Like last year, he was not suspended. Houston told him, do not come, do not show up. You are inactive. So he wasn't on the commissioner's exempt list. You can't trade for it. All the rumors are fun. It fills the talk radio. It does all that stuff. But you can't. You just can't, because, no offense, if there was any inkling that he was available, Denver calls Houston, because Deshaun Watson is the answer in Denver. I'm not sure that it's Russell Wilson, but you wait on Watson. They didn't want to wait on Watson because you could be waiting into the summer. You want to get Russell Wilson there now. So, and to Pittsburgh, I don't know. The Rooneys put up with Ben because he was young and he was dominant, but he was homegrown. You don't bring in a problem. If you're in a bad relationship, you don't go out and find somebody who's even worse for you.
That's not true. Sometimes more toxic red flags are more fun. You never know. It's different flags. It's
red,
fun.
green, colorblind. It's just different.
Hey, I have that
green
problem. I can't tell. Like, I don't know if it's green for good or red for bad. I don't know. I'm just going for it because I see the flag. It's fine.
It's orange, as in orange. You glad you didn't go for it?
Dad jokes for days. But yeah, like And plus, even if the Texans didn't tell him not to come, Deshaun Watson still basically said, "Hey, I don't want to play for you guys.
Yeah, I'm not.
I don't want to play." And it's like, okay, well, you could have. You just chose not to. Like that's kind of the same thing, and to kind of tie it back to the Calvin Ridley. Like, oh well, how can you suspend him for a year? He didn't play the rest of the season.
Mhm.
Yeah, because he chose not to. Not because, I'll go ahead and serve my suspension now, so I don't have to worry about it. It's not how this works, sir. You can't just be like, I'll punish myself before I get in trouble, so that way I don't have to deal with it later. Like it's not how this works. But anyway, we'll move into the last topic.
Wait, hold on, Amon. Do you think that Pittsburgh should go after Watson?
No, again, I think Deshaun Watson, when playing, is probably a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. If he can play, when he can play, but there's just too many questions. If I have to ask when, if, this, that, the other, I have no idea. I don't feel comfortable. I know what the price is going to be at the minimum. It's going to be Russell Wilson. That's the minimum of it, really. So I have to give up that, and I still have all those questions. I just can't feel comfortable enough making any moves.
Yeah. And of course, the last topics for the night we'll do. So number 4, Duke lost to their arch rival, the Carolina Tar Heels, of all teams. For Coach K to go out on a loss to, it was the Tar Heels. So Amon, since I'm pretty sure you live in North Carolina, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're right there in the heart of it. You're right in a divided North Carolina. Do you think that was the best way for Coach K to go out? Were you excited? Were you not? What did you think of Coach K's last home game?
Well, see, I live 20 minutes from UNC's campus, and I live 20 minutes from Duke's campus. I got friends who go to Duke. I got friends who go to UNC, and the beginning of the day started out with the ESPN post for Coach K, everyone showing up from all the Duke students, and they're putting it on their stories. And then the end of the day is all my UNC friends sending me pictures of them rushing Franklin Street because they just beat Duke. This was unreal. And I was just a little bit of shock. I thought the story was going to be great either way. It's like Coach K beats UNC, twice in a season to end his thing. Duke is doing this all for Coach K's last year. And then this way, now it's like, well, they couldn't beat UNC. UNC clinches a tournament spot with this win. It was the most fun back and forth I've ever seen. And until I get my acceptance letter from UNC, I am not putting any stake in either horse. So I don't have a vet to fight. My mom went to UNC, and I make fun of her all the time for everything, fake classes and all that. So, but this was one of the funniest days I think I've had, just because of how different it was from the start to the end, and just the vibes I got from everybody around me. I swear, like 3 houses down, there's a Duke fan, and 3 houses down, there's a UNC fan. And you could hear anytime someone scored a bucket, just the tilting of it. So it was the most fun I think I've ever had watching a Duke UNC game.
Okay. All right, Joe, what do you think?
Let's just say I should have probably consulted a physician after 5 hours after that game. It was amazing. I loved it. 90 plus alumni of Coach Mike Krzyzewski were there. Listen, it was glorious. This is amazing. The fact that he had a stadium full of Cameron crazies, and boy, were they crazy after that game. The fact that he literally had to apologize as his last act as a Duke coach. There is nothing more perfect in the universe. Thanos himself would have turned around and said, you know what? Things are okay. We don't have to do anything here. This is perfect. Like, it just, Mike Krzyzewski, listen, all-time great coach. Much respect. You could say he's the greatest coach ever. I'm sure some people do. I personally don't think that. And it has nothing to do with the fact that I love North Carolina basketball. But this is awesome. This is the same guy who railed against one and dones and then turned into the one and done master. This is the same guy who never was going to take a pro job, but has no problem coaching the Olympics with professional players to help him recruit to Duke. Like, come on. Mike Krzyzewski is one of the biggest hypocrites in collegiate athletics of the past 25 years. So the fact that my North Carolina Tar Heels, my Antoine Jamison, my Tyler Hansbrough, my Vince Carter, my Michael Jordan, North Carolina Tar Heels got to stick it to them one more time in Cameron Indoor Stadium. I'll tell you what, there's not much more beautiful things than that.
So, Joe, I'm going to take the slight slight idea that you're a Tar Heels fan, not a Duke fan.
Just a bit.
Just tiny bit.
Just a bit.
Just
a
small
smidge.
tiny bit. Just small
Just a
tiny
smidge.
bit.
I've never been to North Carolina, but if I did go to North Carolina, I would not go past Duke University. Listen, Duke Ellington, I'll listen to him. My Duke, song by Stevie Wonder, love it.
Mm-hmm.
Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, cool people. Duke University, get out of here with that.
And hey, you can always think of it too. I mean, and at least in college football, UNC is almost always going to own Duke because that is such a sad football program as well. That it's, and I think that's what's crazy is, and I don't know if y'all noticed this too. At least with a lot of the SEC teams, like you look at some of the top rated SEC teams in like the top 25 right now, they're all SEC teams that are garbage. Like Kentucky, Auburn, like Tennessee, all of these teams are just great in basketball, and it's like football. Nah, same with Duke. It's like nah, it's fine. We don't need to be good. We don't need to be good at football. We're good at basketball. Yeah, I will say because growing up in Indiana, so Indiana doesn't have a whole lot of great sports teams to start with. We did back in the '90s because the Hoosiers. Occasionally Purdue. If Purdue could stop choking for like 5 seconds. And if for whatever reason, Purdue football can beat Ohio State again, for whatever weird reason. I mean, tell me I'm wrong. It's like literally Ohio State will be like number one in the nation.
Why we got to talk about the past? Talk about the now. Don't focus on the past.
Joe's ready for CJ Stroud to stick it to Purdue this year. That's what he's ready for.
They probably
now you're gonna make me root against the Boilermakers. Come on. Who hates a Boilermaker?
But yeah, I grew up. It was like for college football, everybody was a bandwagon Alabama fan. That's part of why I liked LSU, is because I was like, well, they're their biggest rivals. Sometimes they win, sometimes they don't, and I cannot stand the phrase "Roll Tide." I cannot stand it. And then for basketball, it was actually pretty split between either North Carolina or Duke. And then back when I was going through high school, that was when Butler, for whatever reason, kept going to national championships, and I was ecstatic whenever UConn would win.
I'm so old.
Huh?
I'm so old. Back when you were in high school when Butler was in national championships. I'm so old.
Look, Amon, where were you in 2010?
In 2010, I was starting second grade.
See, there we go. Now you feel even more old, Joe, and so do I. You're welcome.
In 2010, I was having my 10-year high school reunion.
Well, Boomer, that's your fault, not ours.
Oh man, no, I wasn't even. Dude,
No, you were starting second grade. You don't get to go.
Dude, I was 7.
You don't get to change back. You don't get to change it back.
Oh my god, I think
you don't get to change it back.
No.
You were starting second grade. It's fine.
Oh man, this has gone off the rails.
Yeah, it has just a little bit. God, Amon, I just heard 27 too. Like, damn it, damn it.
I'm gonna turn 40 next month. I don't want to hear it. I'm old enough to be Amon's dad. All right,
just a little bit. His illegitimate child. Yeah. Anyway, Coach K was great. All-time great coach. Can't deny that at all. All-time great coach.
So where do you guys put him? Because I mean, Amon, you're down there. Tony, you're obviously like your whole basketball watching, time has been with Coach K, even before you were born. But like, where do you guys? You don't have to like give a top 5, but like, where do you put him?
Personally, I would probably put him in the top 5, maybe right at like 5 if I had to rank him. Because I mean, because for all intents and purposes, even though, like you said, Joe, he never wanted to coach the pros, but he would go coach the Olympic team and recruit. I mean, you still got consistency out of Duke. I mean, you still got consistency, and I will say what's interesting too, even with all of that, how many times did he ever get this like just game-changing player for the NBA? Like, he has a lot of stars, but you don't have like a LeBron James. You didn't get a Michael Jordan. You didn't get a Kevin Durant. Like, you I mean, again, you got Kyrie Irving, you got Zion, which
Maybe it's Jason Tatum now.
maybe that's a big possibility. So I mean, we never really saw a lot of major all-stars come out. Like Duke kind of it's similar in Alabama in the fact of you're going to get, first round talent type of players out of Duke, but they're going to be guys that can also be good role players and be stars in their own right, but they're not going to completely take over the game. So I would say for that alone, I would put him at about 5.
Amon, where would you have him?
I would have him at 2, right behind John Wooden. John Wooden won 10 championships. He won 7 in a row for UCLA. And it might just be recency bias, but I think what he's done since, what was it, in the 1980s, he took over. And then Dean Smith was already the guy over there in the ACC. In North Carolina, he was the guy. And he kind of, I think, surpassed what Dean Smith was able to do. And I know Dean Smith kind of, I think, had a little bit of a shorter run just because of some of the health stuff. And I know you're a UNC guy, and I know I got some of my UNC. I know I'm a UNC guy coming up in a little bit here, but I do think he did just surpass what Dean Smith did just a little bit. So I think I'd put him at 2, right behind John Wooden.
Yeah,
I'd put him in my top 3. I don't know where the top 3 is. Wooden's up there. I think some of that's, obviously a little weighted with the tournament, the way it was and things of that sort, but it is what it is. You can't just forget all the old basketball coaches. But again, I mean, as much as I like to dump on Duke and Krzyzewski, personally, the guy's a great coach. And he really did adapt to 21st century basketball in the way that they play and the players that he brought in, things of that sort. Like you said, Tony, I mean, maybe the best NBA player he ever produced was Grant Hill. I mean, and which is fine. Grant Hill's a fine player, but he ain't Michael Jordan. He ain't James Worthy.
Yeah.
He ain't them guys. So,
and you got to think he started coaching what, in the 1980s?
Yeah, late 80s.
So
mid 80s, yeah.
So you got to think he coached through really like 4 decades. He coached through the 80s, through the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s. Okay, technically 5 if you want to count the 2020s. So I mean that's a long time to be able to adapt your game and continue to be successful.
Absolutely. But guess what? Lost the last one.
He did. I will say I am a little biased because I'm going to put Bobby Knight ahead of him because I remember watching Bobby Knight and I remember the infamous chair toss. So I mean, I have a little soft spot in my heart for that one. Also, fun fact: Wooden also coached at Indiana State. Just want to throw that out there.
Yep. Never had a losing season as a coach.
Exactly, which is again really surprising. Actually, timing wise, because he was the coach in the 70s. Did he coach Larry Bird?
No.
Damn it. Damn it. Yeah. That'd be like his ultimate one. And yeah, Coach K, it's funny. Coach K, Bobby Knight, both of them started at Army back in the 70s. That's when they started their coaching. So for whatever reason, Army produces quality head coaches for whatever reason. But that's
people forget that Army was a breeding ground for coaching and players for a long time in multiple sports.
Yeah. Yeah. Can't forget those service members that, that's what we're good for. It's what we do. I mean, not me personally. I sit in a chair all day, but other guys, they do that. They do that great.
I keep them healthy and on the field. Damn it.
I don't even do that. I keep the retirees that I have from dying. That's about all I do. I don't worry about the young guys. If you come to me and you're a young guy, you already got a multitude of issues. It's not my problem. So, yeah, exactly. This has been fun, guys. It's always fun. Had a blast. Catch us again next week. We'll be on at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Pacific time. Again, thank you all for tuning in. Please follow, share, like, subscribe. Please do all of that. We greatly appreciate it. And gentlemen, thank you again for joining me on the show.
One thing, go support these guys on their podcasts. Tony, Inside the Hoosier Mind podcast. Go find it anywhere you find podcast. Amon, go find him on Amon Patel Sports Network.
News.
Sports, Sports News. Go find him. These guys do awesome shows. Tony, always fun and knowledgeable. And Amon, you talk about a sport that is absolutely incredible that I have no understanding, but it's still great. And you cover the NFL. So definitely go support these guys on their podcasts. Yeah,
we appreciate it. I should probably release another episode because obviously being a Cowboys fan, I like to talk about the NFC East. I got perfect ammo now. I can talk about Carson Wentz being the second best quarterback in the division again. Not even the second best quarterback, and the second best quarterback in his draft class from that year too.
Don't forget about Out of Bounds with Joe McDonald. Make sure you check that out too.
Exactly. Also,
Out of Bounds with a Z.
With a Z.
With a Z. Exactly. But y'all have a good night, and we will see y'all next week. That is not what I meant to show.
All sports, all plays. Yeah. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we're making a plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety, topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. In the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, they working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays.